My mother told me not to go to my mother-in-law's birthday party. At 9 p.m., my sister-in-law called. "If you don't come, Mom won't cut the cake." I replied, "I'm done acting." When it was time to pay the bill, they were stunned. For 3 years, I had been the picture of a devoted, patient, and dutiful daughter-in-law. I never could have imagined that the gift I was to receive on my mother-in-law's birthday was a despicable conspiracy. They had a stage prepared at the center of the hotel ballroom, ready to force me to give a public toast of apology, and had secretly stolen my credit card information to make me foot the bill for their extravagant party, a bill that ran into the tens of thousands of dollars. Holding a soft velvet cloth, I carefully polished the glass surface of the engraved crystal sculpture. The word longevity, intricately etched into its heart, shimmered brilliantly under the living room lights. This was the gift I had scrimped and saved for, cutting back on my own expenses for half a year to prepare for my mother-in-law's 70th birthday. Since the day I married into this family, I'd held on to a single belief. If I lived with sincerity and treated everyone with my whole heart, even the hardest stone would eventually soften. I hoped this formal, elegant gift would please her, perhaps soothing the invisible distance and the harsh judgments she had held against me for the past 3 years. My husband, Kevin, is a kind man, but utterly spineless when it comes to his family. In every matter, big or small, Kevin deferred to the word of his mother and his younger sister, Daisy. Though Daisy was married, she was constantly at her parents' house, meddling in the affairs of my marriage. Countless family dinners had transformed into interrogations, filled with snide remarks about everything, from the way I walked and dressed to how I managed our finances. I always chose silence. I believed it was my duty as a daughter-in-law to endure a little for the sake of a peaceful home. Older people often have their own principles. As the younger generation, it was best to bow our heads in respect, to keep the family happy. This afternoon, a warm Santa Ana wind blew across the balcony of our Westwood apartment. I was running a bit behind schedule, planning to change into a silk cocktail dress before calling an Uber to the hotel in Beverly Hills. My mother-in-law had booked a ballroom for 200 guests, inviting a full roster of relatives and friends from their hometown in the Midwest. She had said this was a momentous occasion and had to be grand enough to impress everyone in their social circle. Just as I zipped up my dress, my phone rang. The screen lit up with, "Mom." I smiled, quickly swiping to answer. She was probably calling to remind her daughter to be on her best behavior at her in-laws' big event. My mother's voice came through, but it was low and serious, lacking its usual cheer. "Clara, what are you doing? Have you left for the party yet?" I answered brightly, "I'm just getting ready, Mom. The crystal sculpture is polished and ready to go. Just need to call a car. Have you had dinner? Or are you waiting for Dad?" There was a pause on the other end, followed by my mother's heavy sigh. Then, she spoke with a firm, deliberate tone, each word sharp and clear. "Listen to me, Clara. Right now, I want you to take off that dress. Do not, under any circumstances, take that gift or anything else to that hotel. You stay home. Don't go anywhere." I froze, my hand hovering over my purse. My mother, a retired high school principal, had always been a woman of grace, poise, and immense respect for propriety. From the day I got married, she had constantly reminded me to honor my elders and treat my in-laws as my own parents, never to go against their wishes. For a mother who always advised her daughter to be the epitome of filial duty to suddenly forbid me from attending my mother-in-law's birthday, it made no sense. I asked anxiously, "What's wrong, Mom? Did something happen back home? Is Dad okay?" "Your father and I are fine," she replied quickly, her tone growing sharp. "But my daughter's about to be made into a public spectacle. I just got off the phone with Mrs. Gable, you know, your mother-in-law's old neighbor from back home. She's in town for the party. She was just telling everyone what your in-laws have planned. Do you have any idea what kind of trap they've laid for you tonight?" A sudden chill ran down my spine. My intuition screamed that something was terribly wrong. The strained smiles, my mother-in-law's piercing glares, and Daisy's smug smirk from the past few days flashed through my mind with sickening clarity. I gripped the phone, taking a deep breath to steady myself as I waited for my mother to continue. Her voice, though steady, was filled with profound sorrow. She recounted in detail what Mrs. Gable had been gossiping about. It turned out that behind this lavish birthday celebration was a perfectly scripted drama, directed by my precious sister-in-law, Daisy. With my mother-in-law's full and gleeful approval, my mother explained, Mrs. Gable said Daisy told all the relatives to eat and drink their fill because there would be a big show at the end of the night. They plan to call you up on stage in front of all 200 guests. They're going to make you give a toast, but it's a setup. They're going to force you to publicly apologize to your mother-in-law for the crime of being a daughter-in-law for 3 years without producing a grandchild to carry on the family name. And that's not all, she continued. They've also spread a rumor to all the relatives that their dutiful daughter-in-law has prepared a cash gift of $5,000 to present to her mother-in-law during the toast. My ears were ringing, my heart squeezed tight in a vice. A public apology? $5,000? What century were they living in? To use such archaic, feudal ideas to trample on a person's dignity. The delay in having children wasn't even my fault. We had seen a specialist who concluded that the primary issue was Kevin's low sperm count, which required time and treatment. Out of love for my husband, and to protect his fragile male ego, I had kept this secret, taking all the blame in front of his mother so he could live without shame. And now, my sacrifice and compassion were being twisted into a tool for my public humiliation. And the $5,000? Where was I supposed to get that? My salary as an office manager barely covered the high cost of living in Los Angeles. On top of the sizable monthly allowance Kevin insisted I send to his mother. The money for the crystal sculpture had come from my entire freelance writing side hustle, working late nights for the past 6 months. They had deliberately spread this rumor so that if I didn't produce the money, I would be branded a cheap, boastful, and disrespectful daughter-in-law. If, out of a need to save face, I borrowed the money to meet their demand, they would simply pocket a large sum. 1 stone, 2 birds. It was utterly cruel and malicious. My mother's voice began to break. Clara, honey, your father and I raised you, gave you a good education, and hoped you'd find a partner to lean on. I taught you to be patient for the sake of family harmony, not so they could drag you out in front of a crowd and destroy your honor. If you give that speech, how can your father and I ever hold our heads up again? Listen to me. Don't go. Turn off your phone and stay home. Tears were streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. 3 years of my youth. 3 years I had devoted to caring for this family, treating them as my own flesh and blood, and in their eyes, I was nothing more than a subordinate, a tool for them to exploit and show off to the world. I wiped my tears away and took a long, deep breath. A strange, new strength surged within me. I answered my mother in a firm, steady voice. Don't worry, Mom. I'm not foolish enough to let them use me as their punching bag. Thank you. Get some rest. I know what to do. After hanging up, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The subtle makeup, the elegant dress. I looked like the perfect, docile wife. But from this moment on, that wife was dead. Unreasonable patience only emboldens the aggressor. It was time to defend my own dignity. Standing in the living room, I made a decision. I called Kevin. I had to know if the man who had shared my bed for 3 years was aware of this toxic scheme. If he didn't know, I could explain, perhaps even forgive. But if he was complicit, there was truly nothing left to save in this marriage. The phone rang for a long time before he finally answered. The background was a cacophony of clinking glasses, loud music, and boisterous laughter. Kevin's voice was hurried. Hey, are you ready? Get an Uber and come straight to the hotel. Everyone from back home is here. Hurry up. You don't want to miss Mom's grand entrance. I spoke slowly, keeping my voice calm. Where are you? I need to ask you something. I heard that I'm supposed to give a public toast tonight and present Mom with a $5,000 envelope. Is that true, Kevin? The other end went silent. The party music was still blaring, but Kevin didn't answer right away. His silence, lasting only a few seconds, was the clearest answer I could have received. My heart turned to ice. A moment later, he stammered, his voice dropping to a whisper as if afraid of being overheard. Who? Who told you that nonsense? Look, Mom just wants to make a good impression on the relatives. The toast. It's just a formality. An old-fashioned thing. Just go along with it to make the old folks happy. What's the big deal? As for the money, well, Mom already mentioned it to our aunts and uncles. Just get a thick envelope ready. If you're short, we can borrow from your friends to cover it. The main thing is to uphold the family's image, you know? Anyway, I'm busy with the guests. Get here now. He rattled it all off and hung up before I could say another word. I stared at the dark screen of my phone. It was laughable. A husband who prattled on about upholding the family's image, but was perfectly willing to let his wife be publicly shamed. He saw my humiliation as a trivial matter. My shouldering of a fabricated debt as a necessary duty for his mother's happiness. Kevin's weakness had enabled his family's tyranny to reach its peak. I walked over to the coffee table where the radiant crystal sculpture sat. Without a shred of regret, I tore off the silk wrapping paper, placed the sculpture back in its plain cardboard box, and carried it into the bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of our dresser, placed the box inside, and turned the key. The dry click of the lock sounded like the final closing of a chapter on all my forbearance. I unzipped the dress and changed into a pair of comfortable jeans and a simple white t-shirt. Tying my hair up in a high ponytail, I wiped away the elaborate makeup, applying only a light coat of lip balm. I set my phone to silent and tossed it in my bag. That scripted apology, that humiliating toast, if my mother-in-law and sister-in-law wanted a show, they could perform it themselves. I had no obligation to be an actress in their cruel production. Today was my weekend. I deserved to breathe fresh air, drink a good cup of coffee, and enjoy some peace instead of diving into a pit of shame. Slipping on my familiar sneakers, I walked out the door and locked our apartment. Out on the street, the early autumn evening in Los Angeles was pleasant. The traffic on Wilshire Boulevard was heavy, everyone rushing about their own lives. Streetlights cast a golden glow on the pavement. The wind gently tousled the loose strands of my hair. It had been so long since I'd felt the simple freedom of a weekend stroll. For the past 3 years, every weekend had been spent slaving away in my in-laws' kitchen, catering to their endless stream of guests. I turned down a quiet side street and found my favorite little coffee shop. The place was tucked away under the shade of an old jacaranda tree, its interior decorated in a rustic, cozy style with wooden tables, wicker chairs, and warm, yellow light. The soft sound of an acoustic guitar played from a vintage speaker, creating a wonderfully peaceful atmosphere. I chose a small table by the window overlooking a mossy brick patio and ordered a pot of hot chamomile tea. When the fragrant tea arrived, I took a small sip, feeling the gentle warmth spread through me. All my anxiety and anger seemed to momentarily subside. I told myself that my decision today was absolutely the right one. Whatever storm came tomorrow, at least tonight, I was living for myself. As I was lost in the music, a familiar, deep voice broke my train of thought. Clara? Is that you? What are you doing here all by yourself at this hour? I looked up, startled. Standing before me was Liam, a college friend and also one of Kevin's closest buddies. Liam was a civil engineer, a straightforward, no-nonsense guy who understood things clearly. At social gatherings, Liam was often the one to gently chide Kevin whenever he was being thoughtless towards me. He was aware of my difficult situation with my in-laws but always maintained a respectful distance, only occasionally advising Kevin to stand up for his own small family. I was momentarily flustered but quickly composed myself. Liam, hi. What a coincidence. You come here for coffee too? Have a seat. Liam pulled up a chair and ordered a black iced coffee. He narrowed his eyes at me, his expression full of curiosity. If I remember correctly, tonight is your mother-in-law's huge birthday bash, isn't it? Kevin was bragging about it on the phone yesterday, even invited me. But I had to be at a job site. For such a grand event, how is it that the guest of honor, the eldest daughter-in-law, is hiding out here drinking tea? Did you two have a fight? Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, I felt no need to hide the truth. Besides, the ridiculous antics of my in-laws would surely become public knowledge soon enough. I sighed softly, setting my teacup down. No fight, Liam. I just wasn't interested in participating in a play where they wrote a script designed to humiliate me. They wanted me to give a public toast, apologize for my failings, and hand over a $5,000 envelope to be a dutiful daughter. I figured I didn't have the money or the acting skills for the part, so I decided to be a no-show. Liam's eyebrows furrowed. He was stunned for a moment, then lightly slapped the table in frustration. Shaking his head in disbelief, he said, "I can't believe it. In this day and age, Kevin's family is still so tyrannical and oppressive. And what kind of husband is he? How could he just stand by and let his mother and sister bully his own wife like that?" I gave a sad, wry smile. You know how Kevin is. To him, the word filial piety is the highest law. His mother's wish is a divine command. His sister's whim is gospel. If I argue, I'm the disrespectful one. He knew about the script, but he still told me to just go along with it to uphold the family's image. Liam sighed heavily, his eyes full of sympathy. He took a sip of his coffee. You made the right call by not going. Honestly, with people who don't know any better, the more you give in, the more they take. What you just told me also explains the bizarre scene I witnessed about half an hour ago. Intrigued, I leaned forward. What scene? Were you just over there? Liam nodded and recounted the details. I was driving down Rodeo Drive on my way here and passed by the Regent Hotel, where Kevin's family booked the party. I was going to pop in for a minute just to say happy birthday to your mother-in-law. But when I got there, I saw the most ridiculous thing. Your mother-in-law, Daisy, and Kevin weren't in the lobby greeting guests. The three of them were standing on the sidewalk, right by the hotel's main entrance. I frowned. On the sidewalk? What for? The guests would have gone straight inside. Liam smirked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Exactly. Your mother-in-law was in a red velvet gown, fanning herself and looking utterly exhausted. Daisy kept checking her watch and complaining loudly. Every time she saw a guest's car pull up, she'd rush over and put on a whole performance. I was standing nearby and heard her loud and clear. She was saying, "You see, we booked everything so early. We reminded our sister-in-law, Clara, a dozen times. But look at the time. She still hasn't shown up, and she's not answering her phone. My poor mother has been standing here for an hour. Her feet are killing her. Her back is aching, just waiting for her daughter-in-law to arrive so we can start the reception. She has no respect for this family." Hearing Liam's account, I wasn't shocked anymore, just amused. A bitter taste rose in my throat. So, when I didn't appear to perform my scheduled humiliation, they switched to Plan B. They deliberately stood out on the street, making a public show of it. To cast themselves as the poor, long-suffering in-laws being stood up by their snobbish city daughter-in-law, they wanted to use public opinion and the gossip of their relatives to crush my reputation. A patient mother-in-law waiting at the door, a dutiful sister-in-law managing the crisis, and a helpless husband, while I was automatically cast as the ungrateful, uneducated villain, Liam added. Kevin just kept staring at his phone, his face all tense and red. The relatives who had just arrived didn't know what was going on. Hearing Daisy's tearful complaints, they all crowded around your mother-in-law to comfort her, tut-tutting about the shameless daughter-in-law. I was about to walk over and set them straight. But then I thought, it's your family's business. A stranger like me interfering in front of a crowd would just add fuel to the fire. So I just got back in my car and left. I smiled at Liam, a genuine sense of relief washing over me. You did the right thing. If you had defended me then, Daisy would have probably spun some story to tarnish your name too. Let them have their stage. They built it. They hired the actors. And the audience is all their own people. Since I'm not getting paid, I'm declining the role. Liam burst out laughing, giving me a thumbs up. That's the spirit. You've changed, Clara. That's how you have to live to have some peace. Tonight, you just sit here, enjoy your tea, listen to music with me, and let that family put on their circus show. I bet you in a little while, when you still haven't shown up, their whole script is going to fall apart spectacularly. I took another sip of tea. It tasted sweet now. Outside, the streets of Los Angeles were still bustling, but in this quiet corner of the coffee shop, my soul was as calm as an autumn lake. For the first time in 3 years, I felt truly free. The phone in my bag vibrated intermittently. Kevin and Daisy were probably calling frantically, but I couldn't be bothered anymore. Let them taste the helplessness of their malicious plans crumbling around them. Tonight was only the beginning. The clock on my wrist read 9 p.m. The coffee shop was quieter now, the space filled with the gentle melodies of a folk singer. A world away from the frantic pace of the city, I sat in silence, sipping my now cool tea, keenly aware of a freedom I hadn't experienced in years. Liam had left earlier after an urgent call from a construction site, leaving me alone with my tangled thoughts about a marriage spiraling toward its end. From inside my handbag on the adjacent chair, the phone's screen flashed relentlessly. I had put it on silent hours ago, but the frequency of the flashing light told me that someone on the other end was desperately trying to reach me. With a soft sigh, I decided to pick it up. The screen displayed dozens of missed calls and notifications, mostly from Kevin, but also from Daisy and a few unknown numbers. The moment I unlocked the screen, a new call came through. It was Daisy. I was about to decline, but a thought struck me. I wanted to hear what new drama they would invent to cover for my absence. I swiped to answer, held the phone to my ear, and said nothing. Immediately, Daisy's shrill voice, interspersed with dramatic sobs, assaulted my eardrum. "Clara, where in God's name are you? The entire family is waiting for you. Do you know what time it is? All the relatives from back home are here, and everyone's asking where the eldest daughter-in-law is. Mom is in the reception hall, crying her eyes out. She absolutely refuses to cut the birthday cake until you get here. Are you trying to publicly disgrace this family?" The loud music and chatter from the hotel were clearly audible through the phone. Daisy's words were sharp, accusatory, and coercive. The Clara of yesterday would have panicked, stammered apologies, and immediately hailed a cab, desperate to preserve her in-laws' public image. But now, her words sounded to me like a terrible script delivered by a second-rate actress. I took a deep breath and replied in a cold, deliberate voice, "Cut the act, Daisy. What are you crying about? Weren't you and Mom the ones who had a stage all set up, waiting for me to get on my knees and give a speech apologizing for not having a son? Weren't you the one who spread a rumor that I was bringing a $5,000 cash gift to show off to the relatives? Did you really think I was a puppet you could control with your strings?" The sobbing on the other end stopped abruptly. A few seconds of stunned silence followed. Clearly, Daisy never expected that I knew their entire malicious plan. But with her cunning and arrogant nature, she quickly found her sharp tongue again. "Who's been feeding you these ridiculous lies? Mom just wanted to have a proper, respectable ceremony. You're the daughter-in-law. Giving a toast to your mother-in-law isn't going to kill you. Don't make excuses to avoid your responsibilities. I'm telling you right now, if you don't get your butt over here immediately, don't blame our family for being merciless." I laughed out loud, a bitter, hollow laugh for the family I once tried so hard to build. I replied firmly, leaving her no room to argue. "Merciless? Did your family ever treat me like a human being to begin with? To even talk about mercy? Listen closely. That pathetic script of yours? You and Mom can perform it yourselves. As for me, I'm not acting anymore. I hope your family enjoys an evening basking in your hollow vanity." With that, I decisively ended the call. I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb, refusing to listen to any more of their garbage. Placing the phone on the table, I felt a huge weight lift from my chest. A boulder that had been crushing me for 3 years seemed to have been cast into a chasm. The relatives were surely gossiping. The grand birthday party had turned into a chaotic mess. I knew the biggest storm was yet to come, but at least for tonight, I was the one in control. I called the waiter over to pay for my tea, preparing to leave. A strong suspicion began to form in my mind. Why was Daisy so adamant that I come just to cut a cake? My absence was embarrassing for them, yes, but not enough to ruin the entire party. Unless my presence was tied to something essential for the event's survival. Stepping out of the coffee shop, the cool night air hit my face. The traffic on the boulevard had thinned. I walked along the sidewalk, my mind racing, trying to understand the unusually desperate behavior of Daisy and Kevin. They could have easily cut the cake, raised a toast, and made up an excuse about me being suddenly ill. Why the threats and the fake tears to force me to come? A light bulb went off in my head. Money. It was the one thing that family always targeted me for. A party for 200 guests at a Beverly Hills hotel was not cheap. As Kevin had once boasted, the cost per plate was at least $150, not including the open bar, decorations, and other services. The total bill would easily exceed $40,000. Initially, my mother-in-law had grandly declared she would cover the entire cost with her savings. Kevin had echoed her, telling me not to worry about a thing. But knowing my mother-in-law's stingy nature, how could she willingly part with such a colossal sum just to entertain guests? And Daisy, who always talked a big game about family duty, wouldn't spend a dime of her own money. So who was going to pay that massive bill tonight? A woman's intuition told me something was very wrong. I quickly pulled out my phone and searched my contacts for the Regent Hotel's main line. Luckily, my company had held its holiday party there last year, and I still had the number for the events manager. Mark, he answered on the third ring, his voice professional over the background noise. Regent Beverly Hills. Mark speaking. How can I help you? I cleared my throat, trying to sound calm and professional. Hi, Mark. This is Clara, Kevin Davis's wife. Our family has the 70th birthday party booked in the Rose Ballroom tonight. I just have a quick question about the payment for the event. Hearing the name of the party host, Mark's tone immediately became warm and enthusiastic. Of course, Mrs. Davis. The party is going wonderfully. As for the payment, please don't worry at all. Mr. Davis came by yesterday to finalize the menu and left your American Express card information on file to secure the booking. He was very clear. Spare no expense. Give his mother whatever she wants. He said at the end of the night, the hotel should just charge the full amount to your card. He mentioned it has a very high limit. So we were told to accommodate any and all requests from his mother and sister. My head spun. A cold dread shot up my spine. Everything around me seemed to sway. Secretly using his wife's credit card information to force her to pay for a lavish party so his family could show off. So this was the real endgame behind their perfect drama. That credit card had been issued to me by my company just a month ago for international business travel, with a $100,000 limit. I kept it locked in my desk drawer at home. Kevin must have gone through my things, photographed both sides of the card, and given the information to the hotel as a guarantee. Rage erupted in my chest like a volcano. This wasn't just weakness. This was deceit, a blatant theft of my hard-earned money. They had intentionally backed me into a corner. If I had gone to the party, no matter how furious I was, I couldn't have made a scene in front of hundreds of guests. I would have had to grit my teeth and sign the credit card slip to preserve what little dignity I had left. They were cunning, with a cruel plan that left their victim no way out. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, my hand clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. The fury was overwhelming. But a cold, clear logic reined me in. This was not the time for tears or self-pity. I had to act immediately to stop this brazen robbery. My voice, when I spoke again, was sharp and commanding. Mark, listen to me very carefully. The credit card information Kevin provided to the hotel was stolen. I am the legal cardholder. I never authorized anyone, including my husband, to use that card to pay for tonight's party. I am instructing the Regent Hotel, right now, not to process any transaction or charge related to my card information. The manager on the other end sounded panicked. Mrs. Davis, please, calm down. Mr. Davis is your husband. He signed the event agreement with us. The party is already in progress. The costs are substantial. If you don't authorize the payment, who are we supposed to collect from? This seems like a private family matter. Please don't put us in this difficult position. I let out a cold laugh, my voice becoming even more resolute. I'm not putting you in a difficult position. I'm operating within the law. The credit card is in my name. To charge it, you need my physical presence and my signature on the receipt. If your hotel processes a charge using illegally obtained card numbers without my consent, I will immediately report it as fraudulent activity and file a lawsuit against the Regent Hotel for unauthorized charges. As a manager, you know exactly how serious credit card fraud is. As for tonight's bill, whoever signed the contract and enjoyed the party can pay for it. I was not there. I have no responsibility to pay a single cent. Goodbye. I hung up before Mark could say another word. My heart was pounding, half from rage at Kevin's despicable actions, half from the exhilarating satisfaction of foiling their scheme. I could picture the chaos at the hotel when the party ended. When the staff presented the bill, the family would point fingers at each other. They had shown up with nothing but empty stomachs and hollow pride, expecting a free ride. They didn't have tens of thousands of dollars ready to pay. Let them taste the bitter humiliation of being detained by the hotel. It was the price they had to pay for their bottomless greed and inhuman cruelty. I couldn't go back to our apartment now. If I did, the whole family would surely show up later tonight or tomorrow morning, banging on the door, trying to force me to bail them out. I needed a safe place. A place with people who truly loved and protected me. I hailed a passing taxi, got in, and gave the elderly driver the address. A condo building on Avenue of the Stars in Century City, please. And could you step on it? I'm in a hurry. The driver nodded, and the car pulled into the sparse nighttime traffic. I leaned my head back, watching the city lights blur past the window. An image of my kind, gentle mother, filled my mind. She must have been on pins and needles all evening, worrying about me. I took out my phone and sent a short text. Mom, can you let me in? I'm on my way to your place. I've handled everything. After sending the message, I closed my eyes. I had won tonight's battle, but I knew bigger storms were on the horizon. The taxi pulled up in front of the luxury condominium building on Avenue of the Stars where my parents lived. It was 10:30 p.m., and the complex was quiet. I paid the fare, pulled my jacket tighter, and stepped out. The feeling of returning to the place where I grew up, to the embrace of my parents, always brought a profound sense of peace. But that peace was shattered the moment I walked through the lobby's automatic glass doors. In the guest seating area, a familiar man was pacing back and forth, looking agitated and furious. His carefully styled hair was a mess, his tie was askew, and it was Kevin. The second he saw me, he lunged forward like a man possessed. His eyes were bloodshot, his face contorted with rage and panic. He blocked my path, his voice a harsh growl that made the lobby security guard turn his head. Where the hell have you been, Clara? Do you have any idea that my entire family is being held at the Regent Hotel? The guests have all left, and the hotel is demanding we pay a $42,000 bill. The manager said you called and blocked the card. What kind of sick game are you playing? Are you trying to destroy my family? I stood tall, facing the man I once called my husband. The last, fragile thread of affection had snapped. I felt no fear, only contempt. I looked him straight in the eye and let out a scornful laugh. My voice was crystal clear in the quiet lobby. Am I destroying your family? Or did you dig your own graves? Kevin, you're a grown man. Have you no shame? You snuck into my desk, stole my credit card information, and used it to finance your family's pathetic status games. You conspired with your mother and sister to trap me, to force me into a public apology, and to swindle me out of $5,000. What are you, a man or a coward hiding behind his mother's skirt? My sharp accusations hit their mark. He flinched, his blustering rage deflating instantly. His eyes darted around, avoiding my direct gaze. His clenched fists fell limply to his sides. He tried to defend himself, his voice weak and stripped of its earlier menace. I didn't steal anything. We're married. Your money is our money. Mom just wanted a nice party. I figured your card had a high limit, so we'd just borrow it for now, and I'd pay it back next month when I got my bonus. As for the toast, I didn't know anything about that part. That was Mom and Daisy's idea. I tried to talk them out of it, but they wouldn't listen. You're the daughter-in-law. Even if Mom is wrong, you have to help your husband save face. Now you've made this huge mess. If the hotel calls the police, my whole family will be arrested. I sneered, a wave of disgust rising in my throat. A man who couldn't take responsibility, blaming his own mother and sister to save his skin. The righteous facade of the good, filial son had crumbled to dust. I crossed my arms, my voice as cold as ice. Save face for you. And who saves my honor? You'll pay me back next month? Your salary is gone by the 10th of every month on bar tabs and shopping sprees for Daisy. Where are you going to get $42,000? Stop acting, Kevin. I'm telling you now, that card is in my name. I have already reported the fraudulent charge. You ate the fancy food, you drank the expensive champagne, so you can cough up the money to pay for it. Don't expect to get a single penny from me. Kevin stepped forward, reaching for my arm, but I recoiled. Desperation was now plain on his pathetic face. Seeing my iron resolve, his mask of anger fell away completely, replaced by the whining, pleading tone that was his true nature. He clasped his hands together, his voice trembling, his eyes begging. Clara, please, I'm begging you. We've been married for 3 years. Even if there's no love, there's been effort. I know I was wrong. I was stupid to listen to Mom, but this is an emergency. Mom's blood pressure is through the roof. She's collapsed on a couch in the lobby. Daisy is hysterical, and the hotel security won't let them leave. The manager threatened to call the Beverly Hills PD in 1 hour if we don't pay. Please, just help me this one time. Come to the hotel, swipe the card, and get Mom out of there. The debt. I'll write you an IOU tomorrow. I swear I'll work day and night to pay you back every cent. Seeing his groveling, I felt no pity, only a dark amusement. The irony was staggering. His family, who always acted so high and mighty, who looked down on me and oppressed me at every turn, was now on their knees, begging for help from the very person they had tried to destroy. I looked straight at him and shook my head firmly. That's not going to happen, Kevin. I didn't attend that party. I didn't eat a single bite. And I am not your family's ATM. You created this mess, so you can clean it up. Call your relatives. See if anyone will lend you the money. If not, tell your mother and sister to take off their jewelry and hand it over as collateral. I am not leaving this building. My words seemed to drive him mad. He growled, raising his hand as if to strike me. But just as his hand came up, a powerful voice boomed across the lobby. Who do you think you're raising your hand to, son? Both Kevin and I jumped. My mother had emerged from the elevator. She was in her loungewear with a light robe, but her face was set like stone, radiating fury. Her steps were quick and powerful. Behind her was my father, holding the putter he used for his indoor putting green. My mother stormed over, planting herself in front of me like a shield. She pointed a finger directly at Kevin's face, her voice ringing through the lobby. You have a lot of nerve. It wasn't enough for your family to bully my daughter. Now you dare to show up at my home and act like a thug? I raised my daughter, educated her, and sent her to your family to be a wife, not a punching bag for your family's frustrations, and certainly not a money machine for your mother's vanity. Kevin turned pale at the sight of his enraged in-laws. He dropped his hand immediately and stammered. Dad! Mom! I didn't mean anything by it. The hotel is just pressuring us to pay the bill. I just wanted to ask Clara to help us out. My mother scoffed, her eyes as sharp as daggers. Help you out? You conspired to steal her credit card information. You planned to force her to humiliate herself to get a few empty compliments. A man who watches his wife be insulted and doesn't lift a finger to defend her, and even aids the abusers, doesn't deserve to stand here. Now you listen to me. Clara is staying with us from now on. As for your family's debts, you figure it out. If you don't leave this lobby right now, I will call building security to escort you out. And then I will call the police to report the credit card fraud. My father, standing beside her, tapped his putter firmly on the marble floor. His voice was low but heavy with authority. You should go now, Kevin. Don't make two old people say anything harsher. This is your mess. Go handle it like a man. Faced with my parents' unwavering resolve and absolute protection, Kevin was utterly defeated. He knew he had no options left. He took a few steps back, shot me one last look filled with a mixture of resentment and desperation, then turned and stumbled out of the glass doors and into the night. I stood behind my mother, and the tears I had been holding back since the afternoon finally fell, hot on my cheeks. They weren't tears of sorrow for a failed marriage, but tears of happiness, because I knew that no matter how fiercely the storm raged outside, I would always have my family, my parents, as my safest harbor. My mother turned and gently put her arm around my shoulders. Together, we walked to the elevator, leaving the filth and chaos of his family behind, ready for a deep sleep and a much brighter morning. The bedroom door closed, shutting out the worries and wicked schemes of Kevin's family. My old room at my parents' condo was exactly as I had left it. The familiar oak bed, the faint scent of jasmine from the diffuser my mother kept on my vanity, it all brought an overwhelming sense of security. Tonight, there would be no late-night cleaning up after Kevin's drunken messes, no sharp, passive-aggressive comments from my mother-in-law wafting from the living room. I sank into the soft mattress, closed my eyes, and fell into the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in 3 years. The next morning, gentle autumn sunlight streamed through the blinds, waking me. The clock read 7 a.m. I stretched, feeling surprisingly light. Out of habit, I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The moment the screen lit up, it was flooded with a barrage of notifications. Over 80 missed calls and hundreds of text messages from Kevin, Daisy, and a few of Kevin's relatives. I calmly opened the messages, feeling like I was watching the next episode of a soap opera whose plot I had already predicted. The first messages from Kevin had arrived around 11 p.m., right after my parents kicked him out. They were frantic. He said the hotel manager was detaining his family until the bill was settled. If the $42,000 wasn't paid by morning, they would call the Beverly Hills Police Department to file a report for defrauding an innkeeper. He begged me to unblock the card, making all sorts of promises to change and protect me. Reading his empty vows, I could only laugh. A man who couldn't even pay for his own breakfast had no capacity to protect anyone. Scrolling down, I found messages from Daisy, my dear sister-in-law, who always prided herself on being so chic and savvy. Her tone was a world away from the aggressive shrieking of last night. Her early morning texts were filled with desperate pleading. She claimed my mother-in-law had collapsed from the shock and humiliation, and they had to call paramedics to treat her for a hypertensive crisis in the hotel manager's office. The relatives, who had initially been supportive, started to distance themselves when they realized the family couldn't pay the bill. Some had quietly slipped out to their own hotels, while the rest were stranded, grumbling about my mother-in-law's poor planning. Daisy whined that she had to offer her Rolex and designer handbag as collateral, but the manager refused, demanding cash or a valid card. A final message from Kevin, sent at 5 a.m., caught my eye. He reported that the hotel had finally allowed most of the relatives to leave but was holding him, his mother, and Daisy until the bill was paid. The manager had given them a final deadline, 12 p.m. today. If the money didn't arrive by noon, he would turn over all security footage and the event contract to the authorities. I locked my phone and tossed it aside. You reap what you sow. Their obsession with status, with showing off, using other people's money, had finally come with a hefty price tag. I went into the bathroom, brushed my teeth, and changed into a comfortable set of pajamas. When I walked into the living room, my mother was setting the table with 2 steaming bowls of oatmeal and fresh fruit. My father was on the sofa, reading the Wall Street Journal and sipping his morning coffee. Looking at this peaceful, warm scene, I promised myself that no matter what new tricks that other family tried today, I would cut all ties decisively to protect my own peace and my parents'. We had just sat down to eat when a furious, pounding noise erupted from the front door, shattering the morning calm. Accompanied by the incessant ringing of the doorbell, my father frowned, put down his paper, and walked to the door to look through the peephole. He turned back to us, shaking his head with a sigh. "It's Kevin and Daisy," he said in a low voice. "And they look like a couple of loan sharks here to break some legs. Let me see what they want." The moment my father opened the door, Daisy shoved him aside and barged into the apartment. Kevin followed, his face gaunt and unshaven after a sleepless night. Daisy was a mess. Her hair was tangled, her makeup from the night before was smeared from tears, and her eyes were puffy and red with rage. She stomped into the living room, put her hands on her hips, and glared at me as I calmly ate my oatmeal. "Clara!" she shrieked, her voice hoarse but still dripping with venom. "You have the nerve to sit here and eat breakfast? Do you have any idea that my mother is on an IV drip in a clinic right now because of you? You've ruined my family, buried us in debt. You're a venomous snake, a disrespectful, worthless wife." I calmly set my spoon down, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and looked up at her, my eyes cold and unflinching. "Daisy, you are in my parents' home, not the ballroom of the Regent Hotel. This is not a stage for your theatrics. Watch your mouth. Who ruined your family? Did I tell you to book a party for 200 people? Did I tell you to order imported flowers and champagne to impress your friends? You people schemed and plotted to humiliate me, to steal my money. When your plan failed, you come running here to blame me? The world doesn't work that way." Hearing me lay out the facts in front of my parents, Kevin looked down in shame, but Daisy's arrogance was ingrained. She felt no remorse, instead doubling down on her twisted logic. She pointed a finger at me, her voice echoing through the apartment. "Don't you dare slander my family. The toast was just a tradition, and that credit card, you're my brother's wife. Your money is this family's money. What's wrong with him using it to pay for his own mother's party? You're a cheap, selfish freeloader. You see your family in trouble and you just stand by and mock them. You think if you get a divorce, any man would want a barren, disrespectful woman like you?" That was the last straw for my mother. She slammed her hand down on the glass coffee table with a loud crack that made both Kevin and Daisy jump. She shot up from her chair and stood before Daisy, her eyes blazing with fury. "Daisy, you shut your uneducated mouth right now!" my mother yelled. "If your parents didn't teach you how to speak to people, I will. My daughter is a human being, not an ATM for your family to exploit. And the reason she hasn't had a child is because your brother has fertility issues. My daughter, out of love for her husband, kept it a secret and took all the blame. And your family used that as an excuse to trample on her. Now you and your brother get the hell out of my house before I sweep you out with the trash." My mother's words, revealing the truth about Kevin's condition, hit Daisy like a lightning bolt. Her eyes widened as she stared at her brother in disbelief. Kevin's face was ashen. He couldn't utter a single word in his defense. The truth was out, and they had nowhere left to hide. The room was thick with tension. Daisy was frozen, her mouth agape. She had always used my infertility as a weapon to mock me and incite her mother against me. Now, learning the real cause was her own precious brother, she went into shock. But that shock quickly morphed into a rabid, defensive rage. She started flailing her arms wildly, screaming uncontrollably. "You're lying. You're making things up to blame my brother. We are a good family. We don't have those kinds of problems. It's all her. She brought bad luck into our house. I'm going to make you go to that hotel and pay that bill today. If you don't, I'll make sure you never have a moment of peace." In her frenzy, Daisy lunged at me. My father quickly stepped between us, pushing her back. Unbalanced, Daisy stumbled backward and crashed into a wooden display cabinet against the wall. On the cabinet was a priceless Ladro porcelain figurine, a gift my father had received from his best friend for his 60th birthday. A sickening crash echoed through the room as the figurine fell to the tiled floor, shattering into hundreds of sharp pieces. Everyone froze. My father stared in anguish at the broken porcelain, his face hardening with anger. Daisy stood there, panting, her face pale as she realized what she'd done, though her eyes still held a defiant glint. I didn't hesitate. I whipped out my phone, opened the camera app, and hit record. I filmed the shattered figurine, then panned to Kevin's terrified face and Daisy's aggressive posture. As I recorded, I spoke in a clear, cold voice. Daisy and Kevin, listen up. It is now 8 a.m. You have forcibly entered my parents' home, verbally assaulted my mother, and intentionally destroyed their property. This Ladro figurine is valued at over $3,000. I am recording this entire scene as evidence. I am about to call the LAPD to file a report for trespassing, public disturbance, and destruction of valuable property. Daisy, you could be facing felony charges. At the mention of the police and felony charges, Daisy's defiance vanished. Fear washed over her face. She stumbled back, her hands trembling. Kevin, seeing things spiral completely out of control, lunged to grab my phone, but my father blocked him with the putter. Kevin's face was drained of all color as he begged, "Clara, I'm begging you, put the phone down. It was an accident. Daisy didn't mean to break it. If you call the cops, our family will be ruined. Please. For my sake. For Mom's sake. Let this go." I took a step back, keeping my distance, my finger poised over the emergency call button. I stared at Kevin with utter contempt. An accident? She broke into my home, insulted my parents, tried to attack me, and destroyed their property, and you call it an accident? Is there a law that says accidents don't require restitution? Your family is used to bullying people. Today, I'm going to teach you a lesson about the rule of law. Daisy finally broke. She collapsed to the floor, avoiding the porcelain shards, and began to sob hysterically. But these were not tears of remorse. They were tears of fear. They only felt fear when faced with consequences, never regret for the pain they caused. The sound of her wailing gave me a headache. Kevin was pacing like a caged animal. He knew his family was trapped, a $42,000 hotel bill on one side, and now the threat of criminal charges for property destruction on the other. Every escape route was in my hands. I stopped recording, saved the video, and immediately backed it up to the cloud. I pulled over a chair and sat down calmly, looking at the two trembling figures before me. My parents stood on either side, a bulwark of support, waiting to see how I would handle this. I cleared my throat, cutting through Daisy's sobs. "All right, you can stop the waterworks. If you two genuinely want to resolve this peacefully and stay out of a police station, you will listen very carefully to my conditions. This is my final offer. No negotiations." Kevin grabbed onto the lifeline, his eyes lighting up. "Anything, Clara. We'll agree to anything. Just don't call the police. And please, help us with the hotel bill. I swear, from now on, I will listen to everything you say." I gave a faint, cynical smile. The promises of a weak man were worthless. I held up one finger. "Condition number 1. This morning, your mother and Daisy will come to this living room, and you will bow your heads and apologize to my parents for your disrespectful, uneducated behavior. You will also apologize to me for the conspiracy to commit credit card fraud." Daisy's head snapped up, ready to argue, but my cold stare made her swallow her words. I held up a second finger. "Condition number 2. The hotel bill. I will not pay the full amount. I will only consider paying for the base cost of the original booking, all the additional expenses that Daisy ordered to show off the imported flowers, the vintage champagne, the extravagant fruit platters your family will pay for out of your own pocket. And this broken figurine, which I'll generously value at $3,000, you will sign an IOU for." Kevin's face twisted in pain. He started to protest, but I didn't give him the chance. I held up a third finger, the most crucial condition of all. Condition number 3. This afternoon, your family will gather all the relatives still in town and meet at the Regent Hotel. In front of everyone, your mother will publicly set the record straight. She will explain that the scheme to force me to give an apologetic toast and demand a $5,000 gift was a malicious lie designed to ruin my reputation. Only when these 3 conditions are met will I show up at the hotel to settle the base bill. Otherwise, this video goes straight to the police, and you can deal with the hotel manager yourselves. The living room fell silent. My conditions were a direct assault on the fragile, oversized egos of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, forcing them to apologize, to pay for their own vanity, and, most cruelly, forcing the matriarch to tear down her own facade of virtue in front of her entire clan. It was a psychological punishment far more painful than any fine. But they had no choice. Kevin gritted his teeth, shot Daisy a venomous look, and nodded curtly. He grabbed her by the arm and hauled her to her feet. "Fine," he said quickly. "I agree. I'll take Daisy and go get Mom. Just keep your promise, Clara. Mom, Dad, we'll be back." With that, he dragged Daisy out the door. The door clicked shut. I let out a long breath, feeling victory within my grasp. By 10 a.m., nearly 2 hours after Kevin and Daisy had left, the living room was calm again. My father had carefully swept the shattered porcelain into a box, preserving the evidence. My mother made a fresh pot of coffee. My father took a sip and looked at me with pride. "My daughter's all grown up," he said softly. "Your mother and I were always so worried that you were too gentle, that they would take advantage of you. Seeing you stand up for yourself today, using reason and the law to protect your rights, makes us very proud. When she gets here, let us do the talking. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And the truth needs to come out." I smiled and squeezed his hand. Just then, the doorbell rang again, this time a hesitant, timid chime. My mother went to open it. Standing in the hallway was my mother-in-law, looking haggard and defeated. She wore a simple, dark dress, a stark contrast to the flamboyant red gown and flashy gold jewelry of the previous day. Kevin and Daisy followed her, their heads bowed. My mother stepped back, her expression cool but polite. "Please, come in. We've been waiting." My mother-in-law entered hesitantly, her eyes scanning the room and landing on the box of broken porcelain. She gave a forced, brittle smile. "My dear friends," she began, her voice weak, "what happened last night and this morning was all a terrible misunderstanding. The children were just being impulsive. Please, for my sake, forgive Daisy. As for the money, we can discuss a solution together." My mother set her coffee mug down with a firm click, cutting her off. "There is no misunderstanding here," she said, her voice sharp. "The plan to humiliate Clara was orchestrated by your daughter. The theft of her credit card information was a premeditated act. That is not a childish squabble. That is a malicious, calculated scheme. My daughter has served your family dutifully for 3 years. How could you conspire to drag her through the mud just to feed your own vanity?" My mother's blunt words left my mother-in-law speechless. She lowered her head, her face flushing with shame. Her pride was shattered. She knew if she didn't yield now, her family was finished. She took a deep breath and looked at my parents, her voice choked with emotion. "You're right. I was wrong. I was foolish to listen to Daisy. I apologize for not raising my children better. Please, forgive us." Then she turned to me, her eyes a complex mix of bitterness and forced submission. "I'm sorry, Clara. I was wrong to treat you so horribly. Please, go to the hotel and help us. Save our family from this disaster." I looked at the woman who had terrorized me for 3 years, now forced to bow her head. I felt no triumph, only a sad emptiness. I nodded. "Your apology is noted. As for the bill, I will keep my promise. However, do not forget the third condition. At 2 p.m. today, I will be at the Regent Hotel. Be prepared to tell the truth in front of all your relatives. Only after you have done that will I take out my card. Now, please leave. My parents need to rest. My mother-in-law trembled. She knew the hardest part was yet to come. With no other choice, she stood up and, with Kevin and Daisy, walked out the door, shrouded in a cloud of humiliation. I watched them go, knowing the final battle at the hotel would be the end of this miserable marriage. At 1:45 p.m., my Uber pulled up to the grand entrance of the Regent Hotel in Beverly Hills. I stepped out into the warm afternoon sun. My parents had wanted to come, but I insisted on going alone. This was my fight. The hotel lobby was a scene of weary chaos. About 20 of Kevin's relatives were scattered across the plush sofas and chairs, their faces drawn and irritable after a sleepless night. In a far corner, my mother-in-law was slumped on a chaise lounge. Daisy sat beside her, fanning her listlessly. Kevin paced nervously in front of the reception desk. The moment he saw me, his face lit up with relief. "Clara, you're here. Thank God. Hurry, go talk to the manager. They're about to call the police." I brushed his hand off my shoulder and ignored him. My arrival drew the attention of the entire clan. Kevin's uncle, Robert, the family patriarch, stood up, leaning heavily on his cane. "Clara," he said sternly, "this is unacceptable behavior. You can't just abandon your family to face this humiliation." I faced him respectfully. "Uncle Robert, I apologize for the inconvenience this has caused everyone. But please understand, I was not the one who put you in this situation. I had no knowledge that my mother-in-law and Kevin had used my name and stolen my credit card information to book this party. The people who abandoned you are my so-called family right here." The relatives murmured in shock. They had clearly been fed a different story. Just then, Mark, the manager, came out, looking relieved to see me. He handed me a long, itemized bill. The total, including damages from last night, is $43,250, Mrs. Davis. I took the bill and a red pen from my purse. Ready for the final act. I laid the invoice on a coffee table for all to see. "Daisy," I said loudly, "perhaps you can explain these charges." I began to read from the list. 30 gift baskets of imported fruit, totaling $6,000. 10 large floral arrangements of Ecuadorian roses, $5,000. 50 bottles of Dom Perignon champagne. "Daisy, who ordered all of this?" the relatives gasped. Daisy stammered, I just wanted to make things nice for Mom." I laughed. Nice for Mom, or a nice way to show off with my money? I turned to the manager. "Mark, I will pay exactly $30,000, the base cost of the catering. The remaining $13,250 for these luxuries is their responsibility," Kevin pleaded. "Clara, please, where are we going to get that kind of money right now?" I pulled my arm away from his grasp. "That's your problem. Sell your watches, your cars. I don't care." My mother-in-law began to sob. Uncle Robert, shaking his head in disgust, turned on her. "Is this what our family has become? Deceit and vanity? You have shamed us all. You will pay this debt yourselves." But I wasn't finished. I took out my phone and started recording. "Mrs. Davis," I said, my voice like steel, "it's time for you to fulfill the third condition." Forced into a corner, my mother-in-law stood trembling and, in a broken voice, confessed everything to the stunned relatives, the plot to humiliate me, the lies about the gift, and the final, shocking truth. "And why?" I pressed, moving the camera closer. "Did you use my inability to have children to shame me?" She broke down completely, sobbing as she spoke the words that would destroy her son's pride forever. It wasn't her fault. It's Kevin. The doctor said he has fertility problems. Clara knew and kept it a secret to protect him. I knew too, but I used it against her anyway. I was cruel. I'm a wicked mother-in-law. The confession detonated in the lobby. The family was aghast. The truth had finally buried them. I stopped the recording, but there was one last piece of business. Before I pay a dime, I announced, holding up my credit card, we need to settle some old debts. I looked at my mother-in-law. Do you remember the $5,000 from my insurance after my miscarriage a year ago? You took it, claiming you would hold it for me, then gave it to Daisy to buy a new car. And what about the Tiffany necklace my friend gave me? Worth $3,000. You stole it from my jewelry box and sold it to go on a cruise. I turned to Kevin. Add to that the $3,000 for the figurine your sister broke this morning. Your family owes me $11,000. I threw a pre-printed IOU on the table. Sign it. Both of you. In front of Uncle Robert as a witness. You have 7 days to pay me back. If you don't sign, I walk out that door right now. Defeated and shamed, they signed the paper. I carefully folded it and put it in my purse. Then, I turned to Mark. Please charge my card for exactly $30,000. The receipt printed. I signed it, took my card, and without a single backward glance at the ruins of my former family, I walked toward the hotel exit. As the glass doors slid open, the bright California sun warmed my face. I took a deep, clean breath of freedom. A new life was beginning. A week later, after a final threat of legal action, $11,000 was wired to my account. Kevin had taken a high-interest loan against their condo to pay it. The next morning, I met him at a coffee shop and handed him the signed divorce papers. He looked broken, but I felt nothing. Sign it, Kevin, I said. The condo is yours. Consider it my final act of charity. He signed. I walked out into the sunlight, leaving the past behind me. 6 months later, I had a new job and had used my savings to open a small flower shop in my parents' neighborhood, which I named Serenity. The storms had passed, replaced by the quiet joy of arranging bouquets and the warmth of family dinners. Through all the pain, I had learned a simple, invaluable truth. A woman's life is not meant for endurance and submission, but for respect, love, and the fierce, unapologetic pride of standing on her own 2 feet. My life was finally my own.